Hey everyone, it's Matt Krebin with Talk Shop. Thanks for tuning in, shall we say. Virtually, we're all learning. So today on my interview series, I've got Keyon Johnson. And just before we introduce Keyon and bring him onto the program, again, I'm having industry and professionals from a cross-section of industries come in and share with you some insight that they've learned throughout their career directly as it relates to how face-to-face conversation, interpersonal communication skills has helped them. So without further ado, happy to have Keyon Johnson join me today. Keyon, thanks for taking some of your Friday, even though it's not going live, but thanks for taking some time and chatting with me here today.
Oh, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
So, you know what? Like a lot of people, you've got a varied background of some really solid experiences, ranging from the sports industry to the public relations industry to the airlines industry. And I want to touch all of them. But what I want to do is just, if you could, let's just get people up to snuff right away on key PR. Hopefully, I've got it right. My crack staff,
right.
which is me. You are the principal of On Key PR. Tell us just in broad stroke what it is that you do with that company.
Well, with On Key PR, I actually go out and get clients to help them with their media outlook. So if they want, that varies. I mean, we do a lot of stuff as far as getting them to on the television, getting newspaper articles written out of. I mean, not too many people use newspapers anymore, but
Right.
writers nowadays it's more like internet blogs and radio spots and everything like that. So just kind of also doing like crisis management if something happens that a company has to get out in front of. We go out there and we kind of prep them on things that they need to talk about and how to portray it, so that way they can get out in front of it. A lot of the stuff is real easy. A lot of stuff kind of goes into a little bit more depth, and you got to do a little bit more work to kind of get the company's name out there and get it back into a better light.
And a big piece of that, without assuming anything or putting words into your mouth, is obviously the art and science, if you will, of being able to communicate clearly in person. Oftentimes, is that a fair assumption?
That's absolutely right.
So so we're going to come back, but before, without any further ado, I want you to be able to plug whatever you feel comfortable that you want to plug. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about On Key PR, if you want to tell people how they can reach you on your social media platform, whatever you would like to share out, I want to make sure you have that chance so people can connect with you in any way that you feel comfortable with.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can always catch me on my email. It's onkey onkeypr @gmail.com. On Facebook, just my name, Keyon Johnson. Instagram, Keyon Johnson 422. Also, I'm also with a couple of other guys too. We work together and do a couple things at RKJ. That's RKJ brand development too. So that's myself, Kirk Reynolds, who was on not too long ago, and also Rodney Knox. Those are other professionals that are really, really good and do a lot of good work. So just teaming up with them.
And that's professionals with a capital P. I can say that because I know all three of those gentlemen, all three fantastic guys. You and I first crossed paths in the NFL with the 49ers.
Yes.
I know you've also done some work with the Raiders. I know you've done work with the Pac-12. I know you've done a few other things. But I want to go back just to your college days just for a moment. Not that we want to rewind, but maybe there was someone or some people during your time at Grambling State, well-known institution, that maybe mentored you somehow, some way with, one of those arms around the shoulders and said, hey, Keyon, you can always keep this in mind as it pertains to when you're dealing with people. Does anything like that resonate with you? Any memory or story that's just stuck with you from your college day or days?
Absolutely, man. I had a college, he wasn't a professor, but he was the director of the television center. So as college kids, you know that if you were in mass communications, you want to just try everything. So I started off doing television, and my the director of the television center, who actually turned out to be a really really good friend of mine and a very big mentor. His name was Grover Brown. He just, he just kind of took me by the hand and kind of showed me everything and everything that I needed to do. And then when I moved over to the public relations side, he kind of still guided me. He was like, writing is something that's very, very important. And he, at that time, I wasn't a very good writer at all. I mean, I would write something and give it to him, and it looked like, he'd just ball it up and just throw it out. I'm like, hey man, you gotta come, you gotta write that over. And so I'm glad he did that, because now every time that I wrote something after that, I would reread it and say, what is he going to tear up on this one? And slowly but surely, I like correct the mistakes that I had on there. And by the time I gave it to him, he wouldn't say it was a great, but he'd say that's okay, So he would never say nothing was great, but he would say it's okay. And then I know if it was okay for him, it was great for everybody else.
Yeah, I always like asking people that question because some people have one of those moments. Even could be predating college, but I always like to start with college because then it gets into, hey, tell me about your life as a kid.
Yeah.
But being where you went to school, obviously a vast network there. So moving forward, I'm sure you've had a few different mentors maybe at this point, or maybe there's just been one. But moving off of that, I want to get into some tactical element of what I like to do on the program is really share some insight to the college students. If you could kind of put yourself in that frame of mind for the next
Mhm.
question or two, and that is maybe you could relay some stories of yours, whether you actually interviewed or you were networking with someone informally or formally, and you did something that worked well when it came time for Keyon, the brand, for you to articulate who you are to someone, for them to take action, meaning to hire you or to move you along the process, whatever the case might be. Any examples of some do's that worked well, or maybe some don'ts, some things that you learned the tough way? I know we all have those too. I'll let you pick which one you want to choose, but maybe some wisdom and some advice as it relates to when you get that opportunity to meet with someone face to face for an interview or you're networking. What's worked well for you?
So things that worked well for me in an interview setting is
Mm-hmm.
just kind of being comfortable. I mean, when you go in there, everybody's nervous. You're gonna be nervous going into an interview, but you got to find something that makes you comfortable. I even believe that interviewing somebody has the interviewer kind of nervous, because they know that the person that they're going to be interviewing is nervous, so that kind of makes them nervous. So a thing that I try to do is I come in and I will first off just start asking questions and trying to get to know who I'm talking to, like who's interviewing me, and then
Mm-hmm.
from that, um, it kind of breaks the ground, because nobody really does that. Everybody waits. Everybody normally waits and see what they're going to ask, and then try to pick out some scripted answers that they already wrote, or tried to memorize, or something that somebody said. So if you can do that, you can kind of break that ice a little bit more. Just come with just a general question, like how long have you guys been here, or what are some things that you guys like about what you're doing, to that, or what do you know, um, what have you learned in this job in your 15, 20, however many years that you've been here, that you
Mm-hmm.
wish you would have known when you first started? And then that question just kind of catches them off guard, or any questions like that will catch somebody off guard, and then next thing you know, they're telling you their story, and now you're learning, and you're figuring out, okay, this is good. This is what I need to know. So now, how am I going to answer the next question? Now, it also calms you down, and gets you guys to really be able to talk on a personal level, and then get that interviewer to know you on a personal level. So,
I love that idea. It's in a way, again, I'm repeating it just to make sure I'm capturing it myself because I think it's great, is flipping the script a little bit. Instead of
right,
just
right,
waiting back on your hands for that person to ask you the question, you start. Not
yeah,
that you're controlling it, but it's a way it's breaking that ice, but it came from you. I think that shows something, right? Is that kind of what the gist of what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a great idea. Hey, I want to toggle back and forth, but there was something that I also wanted to capture, and I kind of teed it up on the very front end that you have some airline industry experience. And I didn't want to end with this, but some people may have heard of this airline that you work for. It's called Southwest. It's a small player in
Yeah, a
the
little
field.
bit.
I want to just touch on something there because look, last time I checked, when you're part of a crew there, you've got to communicate with a bunch of people. And hopefully this isn't you, audience, Mr. or Mrs. Whoever's watching this at some point. Hopefully you haven't been the one that's agitated and gets on a plane and takes it out on the crew because that ain't right. Anyway, is there anything you can share in terms of maybe there's some training that Southwest provides, or maybe this is something that's inherent in you of how to de-escalate someone? If someone is upset, if it's a conflict, you need to resolve it. Hopefully that hasn't happened, but is there anything that you can just, I don't want to harbor on the negative here.
All right. No,
Anything that you're comfortable or willing to share?
that's actually a really good question, and it kind of transforms into talking and communication, and I think actually having this having the communications background kind of helps me out a lot with dealing with the public in general.
Right.
I recall I had just started at Southwest. I think I was on my first or second trip, and also my wife works at Southwest too. She's a flight attendant as well. So we were actually working on the same flight,
Oh,
and we had another. So it's normally like three. It's normally like three flight attendants and two pilots, and then everybody else. So and each flight attendant has their own like section that they have to work with. So, like I said, it was my first, like one of my first trips, and I'm still kind of nervous because I'm like, okay, I learned this in training, um, and I happened to be walking to the back of the aircraft because we're about to get ready for final descent, meaning we're about to land in maybe like 20-30 minutes.
right.
And I see a passenger who was actually in my section, so we had talked a little bit, we built a little bit of rapport, and he had, walked to the back, and I walked back there. I went to the restroom, came out of the restroom, and when I come out the restroom, the passenger is like pointing like viciously at our other flight attendant, and I'm sitting there like, oh, well, what's going on here? Because it caught me off guard. They were both fine when I walked in the bathroom and I
Hmm.
walked out, and now they're like at each other's throats. So I had to de-escalate the situation as far as like saying, hey, what's the problem? And the thing is, when we're in that phase of flight, everybody should be taking their seats. But if some things happen, so you just gotta learn how to deal with it and learn how to talk to people. And this particular flight attendant did not do that. So I mean, it could have been an easy solve, but he did not easily solve it, which meant I had to step in. And so I had to calm the passenger down first. And then as I'm calming the passenger down, the other flight attendant is like getting irate. So now I have to calm him down. And I just had to find a middle ground, and that's what you have to do in a lot of situations. You're gonna have to find that middle ground to get this person calm and get this person calm, and you're probably sitting there thinking like, how did I get involved in this? Well, you don't really have time to, especially in communications, you don't have time
Right.
to really sit back and worry about that. You got to get this problem solved, and that's what I had to do. So the funniest part about the story is I was as I'm calming this down, I turn and I look and I see my wife, who's the other flight attendant, coming down the aisle, and she looked to see what happened, and she's been there for 15 years, and I seen her, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, she's coming to help me out. She looks at us, saw what was going on, turned around and went back the other way. So she kind of just left me to handle that on my own. So I thought it was pretty funny.
I knew there'd be a gem story in there somewhere. Look, moral of the story: if you see Keyon when you're flying around the skies across the U.S., look, you now know him. Be kind. Anyway, no. The other thing is obviously to have any conversation for it to be productive. Even if you agree to disagree with someone, get
Hmm.
everyone calm so you can be
Exactly.
productive with it. So
Yep.
anyway, I didn't want to harbor on the negative, but that is reality sometimes, whether we're
Oh
in the
yeah.
air or in an office setting, whatever, there's going to be some conflict inevitably. And it's nice to have some skills of how do you kind of work through that. I want to just end on this note. Maybe there's someone, again, kind of going back to Grambling State, going back to your time, your current time. You still do some work with the Niners. I know you're excited about some work coming up with the Raiders being down
Oh
in Las
yeah.
Vegas because that's where you're based.
Yes, sir.
Um, Maybe there's been a time where someone says, "Hey, Keyon, you're the seasoned veteran now. Can you help me? What are some tips? What are some guidance? Anything that you've done with maybe you've mentored a current college student and advice that you've given them as it relates to their career path?" It's kind of an open-ended question. Anything jump out that you're willing to share from one specific example?
Of course, man. Big thing that I learned and I use to this day is you know a saying that was told to me by Tony Wiley, who was when I got my first job at the Houston Texans as an intern over 20 something years ago. He said, "All right, Keyon, you have to have big ears and a small mouth." Like, so meaning um, listen, listen and soak everything up before you go in and just say things. Not saying that you can't say anything, but listen first and see what's going on. Watch everything and just soak up as much as you can. And then once you do that, if somebody asks you a question, then you know how to answer it because you've heard it, you've seen it. That's one thing I learned. Another thing is networking. Um, Networking is for me. It's I love to do it. I mean, I talk to everybody. I mean, that's something that comes like second nature, and that I don't know. I think since I've been like a kid, I've been always able to just go up and just say, "Hey, how you doing?"
Mm-hmm.
I think a key thing in networking, though, from what I find, is you got to be able to separate yourself from everybody else. Like if you go to a networking event, um, chances are everybody's going to be in there and they're going to be talking and they're going to ask you'll ask for cards, or I don't know if they still even do that anymore, but
Right.
a lot of people still do, but ask for cards. Well, I never really do that because I'm all in my head. I'm always thinking we're going to meet up again. So I initiate conversation on how's family. We talk about family. I'll talk about if that person has kids, how's your kids doing, and then just kind of get, like I said, get to know somebody on a personal level. And then the next time we talk, then I'll say, oh, by the way, this is what I do. I don't even try to market myself at these meetings, such at a networking event, because so many people are doing that. Everybody's doing that, and they're not going to remember you. But if you talk to them, ask people about their family, ask people about the things that they like, the things you guys have in common. Those will get people to remember who you are. And once you do that, you'll be surprised. And then just take their number down in your cell phone right now. Just like, hey, let me send you a message right now so you'll remember who I am. So if I text you later on, or if I'm in your neck of the woods, I'll shoot you a text, say, hey, I'll come hang out, or we can grab a beer, grab coffee, whatever. And that means a lot. It's a different tactic, but it's an effective tactic.
Great insight. That's what this program's about. It's about insight, right? Good stuff, obviously. I want to go back to one quick thing. It's not that I need to have the last word. That is absolutely not what this is about. But I absolutely, to this day, still use the big ear, small mouth myself. Listen more, talk less. And I always just add this and tell me if you agree. It's amazing. When you're talking, that's the easy part, talking
Mm-hmm.
to someone, because you're just basically repeating what you know, or you're sharing what
Yep.
you know. But if you listen, be careful because you might learn something.
Exactly.
Listen more, talk
That's
less. So
exactly it.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Listen, for anyone that wants to know more about Keyon, one more time, what's the best? Which I know you mentioned you're on Key. You mentioned the other outfit that you're part of, but would you mind just sharing both of those websites one more time?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I normally just stick on my easy thing, just my Facebook or Instagram, Keyon Johnson or Keyon Johnson 422 Instagram. Another quick point to Matt about networking.
Please.
I also learned, and I actually use this to this day as well. Networking is only one letter away from not working. So, guys, please remember that.
Baby, love it.
Yeah.
It couldn't be truer. I'm laughing, but I'm nodding in agreement. For anyone that's enjoyed all the nuggets that Keyon has put out there on the table for you to ingest and take, hey, please feel free to share this video with anyone. We want to try to share the love, if you will. So feel free to share this video, like it, if there's a way to do that. I don't know, but sharing the video with others is probably important. Keyon Johnson, appreciate you taking the time, joining me right here on Talk Shop and sharing some awesome insight to your background and to your career that's obviously still going and going strong. So appreciate you taking the time.
Anytime, man.